Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, the good captain.
Hello, WABC listeners and YouTube viewers. Today we have a guest who was here before. Very interesting guy, and I think you'll enjoy listening to him and viewing him.
So today's guest on Cop Talk is Jim Walden. Jim Walden is the independent candidate for New York City mayor. Jim, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
So tell us, what's been going on, man, since you were here?
Nothing.
A lot, yeah. Okay.
No, it's been great. Since I saw you guys last, we qualified for the ballot. We needed 3,700 signatures roughly. We got 24,000, which was pretty incredible. Yeah, so many people showed up all across the 5 boroughs. We've raised $3 million. I got the first NYPD endorsement, the Retired Sergeants Association. Okay. I was very proud about that. So it's been great.
That's good. Now, you have a new plan, I believe. It's called A Better Way. It has to do with CCRB, with the NYPD. You want to go into that?
I do. I mean, I have friends that are former cops who are very, very close to current cops. And I've been hearing repeatedly the same thing that I've heard for years, which is the CCRB isn't working. I have a lot of respect for the CCRB. I think the Civilian Complaint Review Board, for those listeners that aren't aware of it, this is the board that was created to deal with allegations of police misconduct. And I've got a lot of respect for what they do. I think there are a lot of good people on it. It was a good idea in theory, but it just hasn't worked. And it certainly hasn't worked for police officers, and it doesn't even really work for citizens when it comes to the most serious allegations. So I think it's high time to call it what it is, which is a failed experiment, and to create a new agency that's more fair to police officers and more effective at getting at the true bad apples. Because I certainly have the firm view that the number of police officers that actually commit serious misconduct are incredibly small number. And when there's this, what I call police bigotry, right? Bigotry against police, people speak in these broad terms as if there's a systemic problem throughout all of NYPD. And I just don't believe that that's true. So the new agency will be much more focused. It's only going to be focused on the most serious allegations, unlawful use of force, abuse, and corruption. And then the less serious allegations are going to go back to where they used to be, which is in an NYPD administrative proceeding. There's going to be due process protections for police, and unsubstantiated complaints are not going to go on a police officer's record, whether it's handled internally or it's handled by this new agency. The new agency is going to be called the Citywide Department of Public Integrity. And for those cases that are serious, there'll be real consequences because this agency will have the powers of a prosecutor. I will delegate the mayors, as you remember, Cap, you advised me that Mayor LaGuardia actually used the powers in the charter as the magistrate. Yes. Well, I'm going to delegate those to the CDPI, and they can bring cases against officers, and those cases will be public, so there'll be publicly available information, and there'll be real consequences if an officer is convicted. But if the officer's not convicted, then the records will be sealed, the same way that the criminal justice system should work for everyone. We'd expect the same thing for regular citizens. We should give no less to the police. So I hope this agency really solves a big problem for NYPD, and I also hope it solves a problem for New Yorkers in that it will focus on the most serious allegations, and it will have real accountability for police officers that really do break the law, as opposed to people that just had a bad day and then end up with a complaint against them that they have to defend. That's just really unfair.
How about false allegations against police officers? So
because the Citywide Department of Public Integrity is going to be bringing cases to court, right, people will be under oath, right? And so it's not the system that exists now where a complainant can file a complaint that is not under oath. The complainant can be interviewed in a way that has no consequences. The complainant can say whatever they want to, whether it's true, false, or a spin, an exaggeration, and there are no consequences. Here, they're going to be under oath. So if they go to court and they lie, there'll be consequences that they will be committing the offense of perjury. And honestly, that's the way the system should work. That's what happens with anyone who's accused of a crime. And we should have fewer protections for police officers. We should at least put them on par with other people that have to face the criminal justice system.
Yep.
If it's a citywide unit, I'm assuming it would you would not have a. Would it be directly under the mayor's authority?
Cap, that's a great question. So, as mayor, I will not have the power to make it an independent agency, but that's what I want it to be. So I'm going to do two things to get at that problem, because you're 100% right in your question. If it's not truly independent of City Hall, right, then it doesn't have the authority that it needs for real accountability. And that erodes confidence in the agency, because people will just think, City Hall's just telling them what to do. So I want to make the agency independent. The way that I'm going to do that before a revision of the city charter is to have a memorandum of understanding between City Hall and the agency, because I can create the agency, right, without a change to the city charter. There's going to be a memorandum of understanding that delegates my powers to them, and the contract basically will say I will not overturn any of their decisions. Now, what I'm going to try to do is to have it replace the public advocate. The public advocate spends $6 million a year of city money and does nothing. And if we take the public advocate and the existing agency for city, that's the city watchdog, the Department of Investigation, and we take all the inspector generals for all these agencies and we use all of their budgets to create this one agency, then we can have citywide resources. It can be well funded, and then we can change the city charter to really create an office to replace the public advocate, and that office will have someone qualified, so that if the mayor gets hit by a bus, the succession will not be to a public advocate who, may not have any real experience in management. We've seen that time and time again. But it will be someone who's an accomplished professional who's led a citywide anti-corruption agency, and that will give people more confidence in the new mayor if the old mayor dies in office.
So you would merge the powers of the DFI, Department of Investigation, into that agency?
Correct.
Would it be only for police officers or for all city employees?
For all city employees. That's why I called it.
Idea.
Yeah. And that way there's one standard of justice across all agencies. I mean, let's face it, the NYPD is the most supervised and scrutinized agency by far out of all of the agencies. And there's so many resources thrown at complaints that require remediation. They require some retraining. They do. But it just takes resources away from other agencies where corruption's rampant. So we really need one agency for one agency over all of city government that has one standard of justice and has due process protections and has real teeth to get at the bad apples. And that's what I want to create.
Would it have a board of directors like the CCRB, or would it be just a chain of command right to the mayor's office?
Well, again, so it'll have a commissioner, and that commissioner will be, we'll call it whatever we want to, the czar of public integrity or the public integrity chief. And under my administration, the person will enjoy what I'll call contractual independence, which means that I will pledge that I will not overturn a decision. Their cases are going to be brought to court anyway, so even as mayor, I couldn't overturn a court decision. But with respect to cases that don't go to court, I'm going to give the public integrity czar autonomy, independence. But that can only be protected if we get it in the city charter, so that it's an independent agency, just like the comptroller. The comptroller doesn't report to the mayor. The comptroller is independent. Same thing's true of the public advocate. So we should get rid of that public advocate position and use that money and those resources for the citywide department and give it independence.
So, but let me understand this. You would appoint the commissioner, but the commissioner would not be reporting to you?
Well, as a matter of law, the commissioner would still, during my term, the commissioner would still have reporting responsibility to me. But I would solve that problem with this contract that I'm talking about, right, that is essentially really a public pledge. Call it an executive order, if you will. But I have the authority to delegate my powers. The mayor does that with the first deputy mayor, right? When the mayor's on international travel, he delegates his powers to the first deputy mayor. With respect to corruption, that's what I'm going to do with this agency while it's within City Hall. But I really want it to be outside City Hall so that it's got equal standing and complete independence and can just do the right thing. And that's why I'm only going to allow someone to be the public integrity czar if the person is approved by a panel of anti-corruption experts. I'm going to let them choose the candidates. I'm going to pick one of the 3 names that they give to me so that everybody knows I'm not appointing someone who's loyal to me. And that was the problem with the Department of Investigation under de Blasio. He picked his treasurer, his campaign treasurer, to be the head of DOI.
Well, he turned on him.
I know.
Right,
But still, who had confidence in that guy when he was first serving? I mean, who appoints their treasurer to be the head of, the head watchdog for City Hall? It's crazy.
Jim, today we have a deputy mayor for public safety. Would you consider keeping that position as well, or would you get rid of the public safety commissioner, deputy mayor?
So I think that that's an important position. So I would keep that person. But what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't let the deputy mayor for public safety micromanage the police commissioner. I mean, that's just it's a bad look. It's a bad practice. What happened to the first commissioner under Adams was a travesty. She was an extremely qualified, extremely qualified commissioner, and she would have done a great job for the city. So you've got to trust your people when you put them in, and that's why people like, Ray Kelly and Bob Ganley and Cy Vance are going to be picking my commissioner, my NYPD commissioner. I'm going to do the same thing for every agency so that people know that there's a mayor that actually cares about integrity. Same process. They're going to pick candidates to interview for the NYPD commissioner. They're going to give me 3 names, and I'm going to choose one of those names. And that's what I'm going to do for every city agency so that people realize there's a better way to run City Hall than this process where nobody has confidence in everyone, because we have mayors appointing their cronies and their friends and people that they're looking for campaign contributions. We saw that with de Blasio. We've seen that with Adams. It's got to stop. I mean, most of the problems that we have in the city are due to poor political leadership, period. They're all solvable problems, but they've gotten worse and worse and worse over the last 10 years because we've picked terrible leaders. And so if people don't realize that character matters and that we don't talk about it enough with respect to especially the candidates for mayor, that's a critical issue for us. If we don't land that plane next time, our problems are only going to get worse. We're going to get dragged into more scandals, and it's got to stop. We've got to stop the clown car.
Yeah. You mentioned Bob Ganley. We had him on last week.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Bob.
I love Bob.
Good man, good friend.
He's a great guy.
Yep.
He's a great public servant.
But in fact, we said if any of the candidates we know win, we want him to go back to the PD. and he said he would be interested. We said, how about police commissioner? He said, no. He said, I'd rather be the chief of staff.
So, exactly.
He won't. I hope he doesn't pull a Dick Cheney on my commission and say, "Yeah, we picked the best candidate. It's me."
Yeah.
Bob, I love you if you're listening.
So, Jim, what's your thoughts on what's going on in LA right now with the police department and the ICE?
I call balls and strikes. I don't care whether people like it or not. I got to give Andrew Cuomo, who's not my favorite guy, props for the plan that he put out today. I don't agree with the way that it's phrased because it's too political, but I do appreciate that the basic gist of his plan is to prepare in advance to make sure that people protest peacefully. And I couldn't agree with him more on that. Whether people agree or disagree, they think that ICE is at fault or the protesters are at fault. I think that there's shared responsibility in America when things go wrong and there's too much finger pointing. But I do appreciate and I agree with him that we need to plan in advance to make sure that we give people lawful, peaceful ways to protest, set up safe spaces, have the police officers that are going to be monitoring the protest, working with community leaders and protest organizers to make sure that everybody knows the chain of command, and so that we keep things safe and peaceful and respectful. People can disagree, loudly, but they shouldn't disagree violently. So I think that was a good plan. I give him credit because he beat me to it. I was going to come out with a similar plan, but I don't know that I could do better than his. There was one part, though, of his plan that I disagree with, which is, I've said this as much as I can, there have to be changes to the sanctuary laws. In particular, we have to cooperate with ICE when it comes to putting detainers in. I mean, part of the problem with ICE is the New York City won't accept detainers when they want to arrest someone. So if you remember, do you remember the woman that was immolated on the subway, Debrina Kawam,
Yes.
the woman that was lit on fire? So there was a migrant that was responsible for that, that was sitting in Rikers, and ICE was concerned that somehow, given our bail laws, that the guy would be released. Probably not likely. But they tried to put a detainer on the guy, and Rikers wouldn't accept the detainer. So in those circumstances, you know, we have to be sensible. We have to exercise common sense. I don't personally agree with the way the federal policy is being carried out now, but it is the federal government's call, and we have to be respectful of the fact that there's some things that we need to be doing to take down the temperature everywhere. We should be taking down the temperature with Washington to try to find avenues where we can collaborate to keep things peaceful. And so in that way, you know, I think Andrew Cuomo got it right.
Yeah.
You know, the last time you were here, you spoke about special court, misdemeanor court.
Yes.
Which was quite an interesting idea. And I think I made reference to Chicago. They have a gun court.
Yeah.
Have you modified that, or are you still? Have you done anything to promote that since we last spoke?
I have, but I'll tell you, there's one constitutional problem that I'm wrestling with, Cap, and that's that it really should be a court that allows New York City to prosecute felonies. I mean, the problem, and the court that I've spoken about. It's going to have a big job, right? Because I'm going to restart a more equitable but still a robust version of broken windows policing, right? I think that that's really important, and that we should be prosecuting fare beaters that are chronic fare beaters to restore sanity back to the subway. I think that we need better hate crimes enforcement, and this court is also going to be dealing with the police cases that make it to court. But it can only prosecute misdemeanors under the state constitution. And so that's an issue that I really do believe that New York should flex its muscles with Albany and get a revision to the Constitution or a piece of legislation that allows New York to prosecute at least some classes of felonies. Because, again, we're going to hold people accountable, whether it's hate crimes, whether it's broken windows, or whether it's, you know, public servant misconduct when it happens. But we have to have a little bit more leverage if we want those cases to resolve, to be able to prosecute felonies, not just misdemeanors.
Jim, what's your thoughts on congestion pricing? I know last time we probably touched on it. We'll bring it up again.
Oh, no, I appreciate you bringing it up.
One thing, it didn't work today. I came there by a private car. He was stuck in traffic. I had to take a roundabout route to get here.
It's not working.
You know, so this is one of those things about government. I have a policy dropping on Wednesday that actually deals with this issue, which is I think the MTA is releasing a lot of data that makes it look like it's making a lot of money and therefore it's working. And what they're not doing is they're not releasing data about congestion outside the zone. And I've heard nothing but complaints about it. My position with congestion pricing hasn't changed. I agree with the goal, which is less congestion and lower carbon emissions. Who could disagree with that? But what I don't agree with is a plan that was so poorly thought through, and after 20 years of debate, kind of almost came out of the blue and was, you know, first $15, then $9, and now they're saying it will or it won't pay for subway enhancements. A, and B, I just believe in carrots versus sticks. You want to get drivers out of cars, let's give them better planning and incentives to choose safe subways and safe bus systems and bus systems that run on time before we start slapping people with fines willy-nilly that don't even have enough exceptions for things like public servants. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Jim, I know that the parole board does not come under the mayor's authority, but the mayor has a bully pulpit.
Oh my God!
And the way it is now, they're the appointees. About 11 of them were appointed by Cuomo, I believe, and they've released about 43 cop killers. What would you do as mayor to help change that?
Cap, this is an issue that's super important to me, and I've been very vocal about this on social media. I think that this parole board is rotten. The idea that they have released so many cop killers is insane to me, but I don't even know if you know this, but on one of his last days in office, after he resigned in disgrace, Cuomo pardoned another one. And then I think within the last couple of days, the Post ran an article that, a board that has his commissioners on it, delayed the vote on another cop killer until after the Democratic primary. Oh boy, what a surprise.
Amazing.
I don't understand what the fixation is with these people with cop killers, right? If there is an offense that should not be a parole eligible offense, it's killing a cop. Period. Full stop.
Right on.
So my bully pulpit will be that I am going to make the case to Albany to limit the state parole board's authority to release cop killers. Period. We want more cops in the city. We want to retain cops in the city. We have to start treating cops with the dignity and respect that the institution should have. And killing a cop should be an offense that is not parole eligible. Period.
Jim, do you have a plan? As we all know, retention and recruitment for the NYPD, just like law enforcement throughout the country right now, isn't easy. So do you have a plan to retain and recruit?
Yeah, so I would say, Kev, that plan is in formation, but the parts of it are already in going on. So like in my housing plan, largely with cops in mind, I created a new form, or I'm going to create a new form of rent stabilized housing there's going to be set aside for public servants. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to give cops an avenue to be able to have affordable housing. Now, the system that I'm creating is going to be outside of the current system. It's going to be contract based. It's not going to be subject to the Rent Guidelines Board. And it's going to have a different way of calculating rent so that it's truly affordable. So we've all heard this socialist Zorhan Mamdani say, freeze the rent, freeze the rent. First of all, I've got a billion reasons to tell you why that's not going to work. But my plan is actually better than his, oddly enough, because I'm going to use a locally calculated rent guideline and then cap it at 25% and then have set-asides for public servants, including cops. I'm also going to increase starting salaries for police officers. I'm also going to give incentive bonuses. And for cops that are near the end of their current career, I'm going to raise the retirement age, and I'm going to give much wider exemptions for cops to live outside the city of New York. So I'm going to use I'm going to do what I do. This is what I did in my housing plan. I'm going to use every tool that I can to motivate the kind of behavior that I want to achieve. And I want more police officers to stay. I want more police officers to feel empowered to do their job without feeling as though the system is rigged against them. And I'm going to land that plane as mayor because it matters to me. And I've said this repeatedly. I wish the other candidates would adopt my proposals because my proposals make sense. And if they get elected with my proposals, I'll know that I did a good thing. And that matters to me more. And I've done that with candidates. I've said, listen, please look at this policy. Take my housing policy. Take my NYPD policy. And I've invited candidates to collaborate with me on these because I would love it if we would all align around centrist policies and then debate the areas where we can't agree.
Right. And what about the resident policy restrictions where you can live and can't live being a New York City police officer?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, Eric Adams gives waivers to his friends and cronies all the time. I don't understand why we can't do it with police. We're a really big city. We love our neighboring communities. A lot of New Yorkers live outside of the city, and they serve their communities in and outside the city. And if we want to retain police officers, then in my view, we need much broader flexibility to either grant people waivers or to remove the requirement altogether, but put a distance limit on it. You can live within 20 miles of New York City or something. There's a more sensible way to do it that, again, the whole goal here is to create more incentives for the great cops of the city to stay. And I want to be a fundamentally different mayor because I am not afraid to go on TV, go to a debate, come to a podcast and say, I support cops. I just do, right? And I do because that's how I grew up. That's how I lived my life. That's the professional career that's been a part of my professional career for more than 30 years. And if we don't support our police are not going to support us as much as we need them to. It's that simple.
Speaking of your professional career, you were a former prosecutor.
I was.
Now, again, I have a question for you that's somewhat similar to the parole issue in terms of authority. The district attorneys, now they're funded by the state, but I believe they get some money from the city, and they actually have New York City detectives assigned to them. So take a guy like Bragg, Alvin Bragg, who is known to release people that shouldn't be released. In other words, he doesn't really do the right thing. What could you do as mayor to have the district attorneys be more, what's the right word? Really do their job and prosecute people to the fullest extent of the law?
Well, Cap, if I could wave my magic wand, right, I could solve a problem that has always gotten under my skin, which is I don't really understand why New York City, being as important as it is to New York State and having the economic clout that we have in the nation, doesn't have more autonomy over its criminal justice system. And I wish there was a way to have a system where the mayor appointed DAs and they weren't subject to elections, because I just think that that's a bad system and that you really need to have minimum criteria and requirements for DAs to make sure that they are that they're protected against political decisions as mayor. I'm not saying that Bragg always does that. I've been vocal with about Alvin when I think that he's doing a good job. I've been vocal when I think that he's made bad decisions. But I think that the election system for DAs just invites political considerations in law enforcement, and that's why the federal government generally has appointed positions for top prosecutors, not elected ones. I believe that that's a better system. So I wish that there was a way that we could change the model, so to speak, so that there was more city accountability to them and there was more accountability to the mayor. But I can't do that. So all I can really do is two things. One, to use the bully pulpit with all the DAs when I don't think that they're doing their job, which I don't have a problem doing because I with respect to most DAs, I have as much or more law enforcement experience than they do. And two, to create the second system that I'm trying to create, to have an alternative when the DAs don't do their jobs, and that's to have city prosecutors and city courts that have independence from the political system that can go after bad apples when the DA's office refuses to prosecute.
Well, I would think that you could look into the funding, what funding the DAs get, and use that as a lever. You know, I know that they get funding for certain things. And again, they use New York City police detectives as part of their staff. You could pull them out.
That's true.
And say, fine, go get your own people.
Take the protection detail away from the DAs. Start there, right, with the detectives.
Every district attorney has a district attorney squad. They vary in size. I think Manhattan probably has the largest one. But
not anymore, Cap. Right now, they used to have about 25 to 30 detectives in Manhattan DA's squad. Right. Mm-hmm. Detective squad, not the investigators. Investigators is a pool of guys, retired guys. The squad, I think they had about 25 plus. They're down to about 5 or 6.
Right. Wow.
And the reason for that is, if I'm not mistaken, is because I guess the powers to be in the NYPD have not been giving them more manpower. So basically what we're speaking about here, they've been taking them away. So as they retire, they're not replacing them. So eventually, Bragg may not have a security detail because once these guys retire, they're not replacing them.
Well, listen, I'm an incremental guy, right? I believe, just in the same way that I prefer carrots over sticks when it comes to congestion pricing. I prefer carrots over sticks when it comes to getting DAs to do their job the way that, at least that I see it. And so what I'm going to try to do is meet with the DAs, be candid with them when I think that they're falling down on the job, have a second alternative in terms of a city-based court system to pick up the slack. And then look at broader areas of reform because, really, it is a strange thing if you think about it that essentially, in a way, Albany has more controls over our DAs than we do, right? If a DA leaves or is replaced, or if a DA leaves or dies on the job, the mayor doesn't have the power to replace the DA. The governor does. That doesn't make any sense at all. So there needs to be local control, and there needs to be some degree of local autonomy. So these are the things that I think nobody else really thinks about or talks about, but these are things that I want to achieve for New York, because New York should have a lot more autonomy from Albany than it has, because Albany's been terrible at passing laws that don't really have any application anywhere else in the state, but they tie our hands. And I've been speaking out about that too, because I don't want to be controlled by Washington. I don't want to be controlled by Albany, right? I want New York to be able to chart its own destiny and be able to control a lot more of itself. The subways are a good example of that. If we could take back control of the subway completely, I think that, and we got the funding from Albany, I think we would do a lot better job than the MTA, which is a mess from everything I've been able to tell.
True.
Well, you're a great thinker.
Thank you. Thanks, Cap. That means a lot coming from you guys.
And you sound, very willing to try different things, which is important, and not worry about the consequences of being laughed at. In the style of LaGuardia.
Yes, I thank you. And I will say that no one remembers more about New York history than you. So I always enjoy being on.
He lived it.
He does.
Thank you.
Thank God. Jim, so now tell our audience, why, if someone's out there really city resident and especially law enforcement and thinking about voting, who to vote for, give us a campaign spiel.
Yeah, no problem. So first of all, I fundamentally believe that we need someone in City Hall that's apolitical right now. I mean, given everything that's going on in the country, someone that just calls balls and strikes and wants to do their job and do it to a level of exceptionalism as opposed to mediocrity is really important right now.
Sure.
And somebody that is willing to say, I want to stay in a lane where I know that my job is to make the lives of New York City residents better. And that's the big battle I want to rage, right? I want to rage the battle for good government, which is one of the reasons I'm putting out policies to limit special interest control over City Hall. So it's the time that we need it right now. New York has serious problems, and I'll take a line from a movie. We need serious people to solve them, not these people that are going to drag us into scandal and dysfunction and corruption. And if you look across the race, I mean, look who's going to be coming out of the Democratic primary. The likely scenario in November is it's going to be me, it's going to be Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, Curtis Sliwa, and Zoran Mamdani. Right? Those are going to be the five serious candidates in the race. And the other four people just have problems, serious problems, ethical challenges and the like. And I don't have those things because for 30 plus years I've been fighting for New Yorkers, first as a federal prosecutor. And then I went to big, white shoe law firms and could have just stayed in a lane and made, millions more than I made. And I made a decision for myself because it's important to me to do a hell of a lot of pro bono and discounted work for communities and people that needed help. And that, people shouldn't confuse my kindness and good-heartedness with my ability to fight. It is possible to have someone in office that has both qualities, that is fundamentally kind to people, but at the same time is willing to bring down a hammer when necessary. I have the ability to avoid false choices, to solve problems, and that's what we need in New York.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a great second interview.
Thank you. Thanks, Cap.
And hopefully you'll be back. Hopefully we'll have you back.
As often as
you
you
be
want.
willing to do a debate on the podcast?
Oh my God! I was down the hall stumping for this. I think it would be great. But by the way, I would love to do it with Curtis.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that he and I would have a great style together. I have not been one that's tearing him down, whether I'm here or other places, because I genuinely appreciate what he's trying to do. I fundamentally think I'm the better candidate to get the job done. But on a lot of issues, he and I see eye to eye. Yep. He's been calling out corruption, and I appreciate that.
Jim, so how could anyone in our audience listening wants to get involved in your campaign, whether they volunteer or donate, how could they do that?
That's a very kind question. Thanks, Kev. So it's jim4nyc.com, JIMFORNYC.com. my race really begins the day after the Democratic primary. So we're definitely growing in terms of volunteers to go out canvassing, getting the word out, hanging signs. Love small donations from people. That's always great to get as many small donations, $10, $25 as possible for people that believe in the cause. We're going to be running against people that have very serious political action committees behind them. I'm disavowing political action committees. I have plenty of ultra wealthy people that would love to start a PAC for me, and I've said no, and I'm putting that in writing because I think it's a bad way to run an election. But in any event, I'm going to be competing against those people, so I'm going to be much more. My ground game is going to be amazing. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to bring imagination and hope to people, and I'm going to visit every single community in the city between July 25th and the November election, every single one. And it's going to be great.
Awesome. Cap, wrap it up.
I think we can wrap it up with this great interview.
Thanks.
I had a question I was going to ask you. If either of you, if you or Curtis wins, one of you could become the deputy mayor.
I would welcome him in my administration, Cap.
I like that. That's good. But Jim, thank you again for being here. Everyone, Jim Walden for New York City Mayor, run as an independent, and we wish you luck, and we hope to have you back here again. And I think a debate would be great with you and Curtis. That'd be cool. And we're going to work on that right after the primary.
Terrific.
So, okay, once again, thank you everyone for listening. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Cop Talk. You could also follow us on X at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. And once again, our guest, Jim Walden for New York City Mayor. We welcome you and good luck to you. And Captain?
And don't forget, you can also view this great interview on YouTube.
So until next time, God bless you, God bless America, God bless the U.S. military, and also God bless law enforcement throughout the world. Be safe. Thank you.